I put out a message on Instagram, can somebody help? I need somebody to help. I've got 12 children with me. And this guy called Lo, I responded, massively impacted me. And it was just like, I need to be more like this.
You were so nice and gracious to him. He was lovely back. You were really genuinely excited because it was another moment. And you absolutely nailed it. Really one of my favorite all-time moments from like the show, for sure. But your evolution as a creator.
Today, we're looking back at the journey, the reinventions, the mistakes, the wins, and the moments that made this show what it really is. Raj is going to challenge me, question me, and probably embarrass me. And that's exactly why we're here. He knows all about content, hustle, and reinvention. He runs his own podcast, he's built a global creative network, and he's seen media evolve from analog to digital. And he's someone who's seen every version of me over the course of the last 7 years. My good friend, Raj Kotecha. Let's go.
She sent me an email. Hey Spence, I hope you're well. I just thought I'd email you and let you know the impact the podcast has had on my life. I want you to know how important it was to me, and I want to just say thank you. If people want to judge me negatively by what somebody else has written about me online, well, I don't care. I'm constantly asking myself a question. What do I have to do differently? What do I have to improve? I feel why other people give up because I've thought of giving up. Wow, where do we start with this episode? Welcome to the show, Raj.
Thank you so much. I'll tell you where we start. We'll start with welcome to the I Told You So podcast with Raj Kotecha.
We should rename it that.
Yeah, for one episode only. No, it's lovely to be here, Spencer.
It's so nice to sit and be able to spend a bit of time with you. And we've had this relationship for so many years now, and you've been so valuable to me in so many ways. And, you know, you kicked my ass along the way as well to do things maybe I didn't want to do. And I've got you, and everyone that listens and watches this show has got you to thank for it actually happening and being something. So welcome to the show, and thank you once again.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's lovely to be here. Really
What
lovely
was your, if you go back to the beginning of us doing this, I kind of have a story that I tell about it.
Mm-hmm.
And my story is, someone said to me, you should have a podcast. His name was Raj Kotecha. And I said, what's a podcast? Okay. And then that was kind of like the beginning of the journey, because it didn't happen instantly. It manifested itself over the course of, I think, 9 months to a year, when we were bumping into each other, talking to each other about it. And, you know, you really should do it. You really should do it. And I was very resistant to actually doing it. And then I'd move into the next step of the story, where I remember you saying to me, the first episode, no, you're going to record it on your own.
I'll tell you what I remember, and it's actually couldn't be more characteristically different. So what I remember is you posted on Facebook saying, I'm looking for a social media guy. One of our mutual friends, Vish, that was been on a stage with you at some point, tagged me in Facebook. I then connected with you, and we met at JW Marriott Marquis downstairs with one of your executive team. And I was also with my partner in VaynerWorld with Gary Vaynerchuk, Sujin. So all four of us met, jammed, had a coffee, and had a great time. And then the idea then was to produce social content for you, because I saw the content that you were producing at the time. I bravely gave true and honest feedback as to what I thought. And then after continuing to produce different types of content, all roads very quickly led to a podcast, because you were very competent at long form. You were very competent at thinking on your feet. Through spending a lot of time with you, which I was very fortunate to do with all of my clients at that stage in my business, was to have a lot of like intimacy in terms of figuring out what their real life is like. I saw that you had obviously an amazing network, and you already had a reputation, which is one of the interesting things about your journey, is that you were already financially successful and you already had a reputation in real life. And so there was no real business case for you to launch a podcast. But as I've done in the past, I saw this trend coming. I'd seen it quite well evolved in the US and the UK with, at that time, people like Tim Ferriss. And I was like, there's a wide open space for someone to be that person in the Middle East, and specifically in Dubai. And in my head, I was 100% convinced that you were that person.
What was it about me that you thought, because, okay, lots of people have a reputation, lots of people are financially secure, you know, and lots of people think on their feet. That's not to me anything unusual.
Well, here's what it is. Here's one of the general, universal laws when it comes to working with a talent and developing a talent on camera. Typically, most talent, whether it be a long video or a short video, are very good at either the beginning and the end and terrible in the middle, or they're incredibly good at the middle part, but terrible at introducing and outroing their content. Neither of those really mattered too much with you. Because of your background in sales, you did, and probably still do, spend a lot of time investing in rapport building. And I felt like if we did go into a podcast mode, if you were able to still build that rapport on camera, the same way that you do in real life, that would translate quite well. Because in that, from a content perspective, you are unlocking and allowing your guest to bloom and giving context to the person who's your audience. And I thought the audience would appreciate that.
Been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of episodes now, and the whole idea of doing this today with you was to go back and reminisce a little bit and remember all of those experiences that we had together, and then even the ones that we didn't do together, and how that evolved over the years. And you've always been great counsel for me. You know, if I've got an idea, and I feel maybe that was a little bit mutual as well, because you had different ideas with, you know, my friends, your friends, and, you know, how you could turn that into a money-making idea that I saw within it and stuff like that. And we'd always used to sit and, you know, brainstorm ideas around that. But you were always someone that I felt like if I needed to ask a question, I could trust. There were a couple of examples of that. We did some stuff with Aldar. Do you remember that?
I do. It was a game changer for our business as well, yeah.
So this was partway through the journey, but Aldar asked me to do an event with them, and at that event, I think we had Stephen Bartlett. And,
it's you and Stephen Bartlett on stage at the Dubai Royal Opera.
No, that wasn't the Aldar one. That was the other one.
Oh, that was the day before.
So we did Aldar in Abu Dhabi. Okay, and the reason I'm talking about it is that I asked you to come and help me.
Yeah.
Even though I had people I was working with, I'm like, I need someone that I feel is a safe pair of hands to help run this show.
That was the best spec ever. I said to you, "What do you want me to do?" And you were like, "I don't know. I just need you there." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna have to roll with whatever it is that he needs." And we did some amazing work on that project with Stephen Bartlett. I mean, obviously, Stephen was coming up and he was popular. He's not the behemoth that he is now, like number 2 podcaster in the world. But there were lots of things about him that were quite interesting, lots of stuff that you'd observed, lots of stuff that I'd observed from a different aspect of Stephen's life. Like he had a relationship with a guy called Jamal Edwards, who's now passed, rest in peace. And we were able to put together some interesting questions to make sure that Stephen was able to go in multiple different places. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you doing Dubai Opera House and you doing the Abu Dhabi event, they might have been 24 hours apart. So you did them back to back in very different ways. In one way, you were like the guest host on stage at the Opera House. And then the next day you were the MC for the whole event, of which Stephen and Lewis Howes were the pinnacle. So yeah, it was a very, very great event. And off the back of that as well, we did more work with Aldar in our business and creative content agency, which also leans into the fact that one of the things that I've always appreciated about our relationship, and I say this to other people, especially when people ask me about you or working with you or if they should work with you, I'd say I always say to them, you can make money just standing next to Spencer Lodge, just being the guy who's next to him or the person after that. And if you don't make money, then you're not really meant to make it, because just being in proximity of some of the people that you move around with is always super beneficial. But then there are many times, like even when I first started my agency here, I used to only deal with like big clients, and inside there were founders. You were the first individual founder that I said, okay, you know what, I'm just going to back this guy regardless of there being no huge company around him. And then the amount of times that you like literally walked us into rooms and said, hey, this is Raj, he's my producer, you should sign with him. And that was the premise of the beginning of the conversation. So everyone's well put in their box, knowing exactly why we're at the table to talk. And of course, that helped us a tremendous amount. So you've been as influential in our journey as I hope we've been in yours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I have a wonderful life as a result of my relationship with you, like a better life than I could ever imagine.
It's quite nice to hear.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, we can cut all this out. I'd prefer to cut it out. But like, you know, I have a fully paid off house in London as a result of what I've learned from you.
Wow.
But yeah, don't put that out there as HMRC is watching, but you know.
Do you remember the Tony Robbins podcast?
Yes.
Us trying to get him and then getting him and then being told that we've got like this 35-minute slot, and he turned up at those studios.
and he was hot. The temperature in that studio was hot.
Yeah,
So you had to cope with a big Hollywood level, I would say US government level entourage, and insane temperatures and a very, very finite slot. Yeah, you handled that one really well. And it had to be in sync with Forbes magazine and all the other brands and stakeholders that were bubbling around you at that time. No, you hammered that one. It was a real good one.
There were some great photos of you holding your hand up to Tony's hand.
Yeah.
Because his hands are so big. And by comparison.
Yeah, and neither of us knew where to go with that because, you know, you'd pulled big fish out of the water before in terms of like guests. And prior to that, I would say your North Star was Grant Cardone, but you managed to get that so early and so swiftly that it almost felt like we'd done what we were meant to do, but we hadn't even considered like the same guy that Oprah enjoys interviewing and the same person that helps the Serena Williams of the world and the Bill Clintons of the world. Like that was actually probably, it was still a North Star, but it was a North Star in another galaxy. And then when you got that one, it was incredible. I think everybody that day was on their A game because even Tony and I, prior to that, had mutual friends. And I was like, just to make sure that everything is all smooth, I was like, hey, you know, I'm friends with this person. They was like, yeah, wonderful. How's she doing? And everybody in the team just did their little bit to make sure that when it was time for action, that you could actually knock it out of the park. And I'll tell you why I enjoyed most about that. Because there was, you know, only very few people were allowed in the studio that day. But when I really felt great about your work with Tony Robbins is when you went to do a corporate gig for a huge property technology company here in the UAE. And they had I believe it was a 90-foot stage and cranes flying all around this massive, huge, like ballroom, all cameras on you. And that was part of your pre-roll, along with like your hiking and all the other stuff that you'd done. And I was like, now everyone sees what this guy's about. You know, that was definitely a milestone moment where it's like, you know, there's thousands of people in the crowd listening to everything that you're saying. And before you even got on stage, in that 1 minute video, even if people hadn't have heard of you, there was that signature video, that signature mass baptism before you walked on stage, where when you do get on stage, you don't have to prove yourself as Spencer Lodge. You just stepped into Spencer Lodge, the person that they were already aware of. There was so many great moments, and sadly, great moments that other people that have tried to follow your path, that have quit before you, have never got to experience. Do you remember those moments? And do you remember feeling how big those moments were? Or was that just all us and me and the team?
I think that, so you're talking about the Bay Big Broker event.
That's right.
And they had a 90, whatever it was the longest stage in the UAE, apart from the one at the Meydan Racecourse or Screen. It was the Screen, wasn't it? And I remember them asking me to do it, and I'd built up a good relationship with them, and so I was happy to do it. And I think that leading up to it, I don't think so much you think about it. I think it's after you do it that you look back, because it's like stress, tension, and it's like go. But again, you were there, and you keep me calm, and it's like, right, let's get this done, let's get that done. I've got that covered, no worries. And what you do is really interesting, and so this is how I find it calmer. Is that you spend a lot of time building rapport yourself. And so all of the people that are part of that, whether it was Sahara who was involved, or Fibber, if you can remember, or Haider, all those people there, just having that, rather than people wearing black outfits standing in the background, okay, having that as kind of support was always really good. But yeah, I think looking at that was a big fun event to do, because we did the one the next year in the Coca-Cola Arena, and that was even bigger in that, and so that was a lot of fun too. But
I had an agenda too, which was to get the Masters. I'll be honest with you, because I was like, we can shoot him in his studio, because you've always had a studio. We can shoot you in other people's studios, TV studios, but it's different when your client is being shot on a 80-90 foot crane that's coming down from such a height and is shooting you. Because when we saw, obviously I was working with Bayou at that time to get the Masters, I was like, we just need the Masters. Whatever you do, just whenever this guy raps and whenever you've got the Masters, give me the Masters. I need it for Spencer's library. And I remember getting shivers when I first saw it, because I was like, there's nothing in our resource as a boutique agency that would ever be able to shoot this guy, almost like there's a drone flying inside the arena. And it's just these really special moments, man. And you asked me before, like, you know, what would I hope to get from today? And I was joking. It's like the I Told You So podcast. But it really is like a super proud moment for me, because your career in content is an art form, and it's just so rare that it goes to this height. And so, yeah, no, it's a very special moment. Us being friends aside, it's a very special moment.
I find it hard to hear that because I think of two reasons. One which gives me peace, and the other one which gives me pain. The one that gives me peace is when I asked Lewis Howes how many podcasts he did before he knew what he was doing. And he told me I did 500 before I had a clue what I was doing. And I was like, wow. And I was probably at about 150 or 200 back then. And so I was like, crikey, I've got a long way to go. So it gave me some peace. But the pain has always been, this has never gone as far as it could have gone. And it's never been as big as it could have been. And I look at the other people that create these really successful podcasts, and I'm constantly asking myself a question. What do I have to do differently? What do I have to improve? Is it just that I'm a 55-year-old middle-aged man and it doesn't work for people like me? Is it because actually there's a niche of people out there that actually think I've got a nice podcast, but the rest of people either don't like it or couldn't give a shit? And so that's always kind of like troubled me. And I think what I think from that is that I feel why other people give up, because I've thought of giving up at least twice a year, every year, since the beginning. Then you have these moments that come, like a Tony, a Grant, that 15 minutes with Gary. No, you know what I mean? All these little moments that happen, and you just get a buzz, and you're like, no, I'm meant to do this. This is what I'm supposed to do. I can't stop this. I have to keep going.
Yeah, dopamine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, and so then it's always a really challenging thing for me, because I've kept it going, and if I look over whatever it is, 300, how many episodes we've done? 370. 350. Oh, okay, whatever the number is, ridiculous number. And I look at that and I'm like, I've done some very average work in there too. It's not all great stuff. But also I look at remove celebrity or some form of media figure in some way, and then just look at the podcasts I did that had really, really deep meaning for me. It was interesting how they did a lot to spur me on as well. And so I think a lot of the time...
What would be an example of that?
For sure, Nick Harris being on death row, and that was online in COVID, but Nick Harris being on death row for 20 years for a crime he didn't commit, that just blew my mind.
And if I remember correctly, that was the first time that you really take out the celebrity element, and where you lose on celebrity, you win on story. And I remember when you dropped that episode, and I was like, oh, he's really tackling a big story, because to extract that story out and lay the information out in front of your audience in a way that makes sense is also not easy. So I'm glad you said that, because that felt like a turning point for me as somebody watching your career. Did you know during the time that, hang on, I'm really dealing with a meaty story here?
No, I didn't understand the significance of it. And I remember, because Nick was homeless and he was in a friend's caravan and he was filming it, and he had a sheet hanging down covering the window of the caravan while he was filming. And we were live on Facebook at the time. And I just remember this guy narrating to me this story. And I was like in the movie with him. I was in that story. I didn't speak for ages as he was talking. It was just like, what? And all of the emotions everyone else was feeling as they were typing into the comments, I'm feeling them. And I'm like, what? And I don't want to look down at the comments because I'm so locked into this guy's story. And it meant so much to me that he shared it with me. So that was a really kind of like really significant time for me personally, in terms of the type of story.
I wanted to ask you significance. You mentioned it twice now. Expand on significance. Why is it significant in the grand scheme of your, like, significant how? In the grand scheme of the show or your ability as a creator?
No, not as ability as a creator. It was significant for me because obviously after doing hundreds and hundreds of episodes, you get to the end of an episode sometimes and it's like, okay, cut, you shake hands, you've had a nice conversation, and then you move on. The significance was that it was pushing me to commit more. It was making me go, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. That I'm meant to do this. And that was the significance of that story, because it made me feel that people needed to hear these stories and I needed to tell them, or I needed to be able to create a platform for people to share their story. because it happened on a few other episodes as well, where there were really powerful stories that really moved me. And whether I'm just a softie at heart and I get lost in someone's story, I don't know. But Alex Lewis, who lost his arms and his legs when he got blood poisoning, and then his mouth and his nose. That story absolutely blew my mind. How that guy from the UK went through that. When I learnt about the stories of the children, the Indigenous children in Canada that were killed in the Catholic churches, Annika Lucas, I mean, I will never, ever, for the rest of my life, ever forget the impact she had on me, telling the story about what happened to her when she was a kid. And, that was my first piece of content that, in terms of numbers, hit a chord with people. And then I knew that I was doing something right because it really hit a chord with people. And it wasn't fame or money or controversy. It was just a true story about what somebody had been through. And so that meant an awful lot to me. And I don't know if I've told you this, but a couple of months ago she sent me an email.
No, tell me.
So Annika sent me an email about 2 months ago. I've not spoken to her in 5 years.
Uh-huh.
She sent me an email. Hey, Spence, I hope you're well. I know we've not spoken for a long time, but I just thought I'd email you and let you know the impact the podcast has had on my life.
Okay.
All of the great work that I've done since, all of the media work that I've done has come from that. And I want you to know how important it was to me, and I want to just say thank you. And that was the email. And I responded back to her, so, wow, thank you, thank me, thank you. And then I said, I said, she said to me, when I responded back to her, I said, let's jump on a Zoom and have a chat. I'd love to catch up with you. So we caught up, and I'm like, she said, would you like to do another episode? And I said, okay, I'd love to, but I don't know what the story would be. There's a very powerful story that's been told. You can't tell the same story twice. And she said something to me, which I'm not sure we can keep on this, but I'm going to go for it anyway. She said, I know all about the Epstein files.
Wow.
And so if you wanted to do an episode on that, I know a lot about that.
Hmm.
And so we agreed that she would. And she's coming to Dubai.
Wow.
To do it. And I'm going to get a chance to give her a hug and, meet this person who had an impact on me in the way she did and gain some more value out of her, really, and just connect with her on a deeper level.
So let me ask you then, on the other side of these moments, individually and collectively, does this now feel like a privilege to have these conversations? Does it feel like a responsibility that you have to have these conversations? Or does it feel like an obligation, something you've started that you now have to finish?
All of them. Because some of the conversations aren't as meaningful.
Mm. And I think that's okay. Even if you only did 10 episodes, there's going to be rank and file.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I'm educated, or I'm entertained, or I'm impacted, essentially if you're telling your story to me as the host of the podcast, I'm the audience.
Yeah, that's a good POV, yeah.
And so I'm literally the audience. And so you're telling me the story just like you're telling every listener and every viewer the same thing. And we're all with you. And I get the privilege of asking more questions out of my natural curiosity, but I'm the audience. And so if I leave that podcast and I go, wow, and Alex and I, over the years, we've filmed stuff that we've even said before the guest has come, all right, we'll give it our best shot. We'll see how it goes. And then we leave, the podcast ends, the guest goes, and we just look at each other and go, what the F, wow. That was a heavyweight round. That was, for sure. And so you never know. That's the truth. But I think that the starting, it's like, what is the finish? What does it become? What does it evolve to? And I think that is the question I ask myself every 6 months. What does it become? Where does it go? And I think that I'm never able to easily answer that. And so when people talk to me about it, people don't know me for anything apart from the podcast here in Dubai.
Right.
Not that many people know me, but they know me for the podcast. And I'm very grateful that they do, the ones that do. But I know I don't have Stephen Bartlett and Chris Williamson and Patrick Bet-David numbers. But I really wish I did. And I think it's like, there's some things I know how to do in the world. Okay, so selling's one of them. I know how to sell. I don't know podcasts. I still consider myself a beginner. I can still look at my numbers and think I'm a beginner. And that's really difficult for me to cope with because I haven't been able to master something. And I feel like I've got enough experience of trying to, but I haven't been able to master it yet. And so, and you say, oh, you shouldn't put yourself down and stuff like that. But, you know, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah. I think it's also worth noting as well that there are characteristic differences that these people have had on their journeys. When a Patrick Bet-David or a Stephen Bartlett blows up, they also do so whilst having a publisher simultaneously pushing a book, whilst you have a TV producer simultaneously pushing a TV show that they're on. And so it's the compound impact of that. Now, you're not going to have your own TV show here in Dubai. And even if you did, the boundaries of how much impact it would have would be different because, as you know, in Dubai, most people are out and about enjoying the day. You know, they're not sat at home vegging out watching 20 to 30 hours worth of television every night because the weather's great and there's many other options. So I think infrastructurally, on a media adjusted basis, if you factor in this handicap of what the media capabilities are here and how much people consume media, I'd probably argue you're relatively doing better. Because to walk around here and be recognized as the guy who's doing the podcast without TV, without magazines, without all these other opportunities working in sync for you, it's still quite an accomplishment from my perspective.
It's interesting you say that.
Yeah,
Maybe it's just the lens that I look through. You know, when I think about it.
If you could then think about these conversations that you've had, is there 3 episodes that you would congratulate yourself for? Now, I don't want to put this as just like it was a good interview, but it could also be the downstream impact that podcast made, or even selfishly that it was just a really great moment for you, or it had like a long tail impact on one of your businesses. So use any of them as the metric for what you think is good. But if you could now go back like the podcaster of Christmas past and give yourself a pat on the back and be like, well done, mate, that's going to play out really well for you. Or, you know, well done, you enjoyed that. And give yourself a pat on the back. Which episodes would those be?
I think the episodes where I learn the most are the episodes that really count. And if I think about them, the second episode I did with Daniel Priestley.
Yeah, that was better than the first for sure.
And I said to Daniel beforehand, I don't want to leave this episode like I did last time. And he said, where did you leave it? I said, I left it knowing what to do, but not knowing how to do it.
Yeah, your angle on that episode was, I want hyper detail. And I want to make sure that no stone is unturned.
I just want someone who doesn't know what to do to know the first step first. And so many people miss the first step. They stop because the one man band that's starting his journey there, okay, Daniel and all the others kind of start just above, which is great because everything above that, what they teach is really valuable. But those people are still lost because they can't make that first step because they're not being given the details. And so what I said with Dan in the episode is, no, Dan, stop. And he was sat here doing it. And I'm like, no, let's go back again. I want people to know, what button do they push on their laptop? You know, that kind of stuff, you know. And you know, what is the wording that they would write on that message? You know, really basic stuff. So that was valuable. And I really enjoyed doing that with him.
Before you made that decision, what made you advocate for that avatar, for that person that you wanted to help?
I think so many people in business so many people that leave like the corporate world or a full-time job and set a business up on their own don't know what to do. They've got a great idea. Okay. They know the skills required to execute with the client, but they don't know how to run a business. And there are steps that they need to take. And I think that for me, it was just like, no, people have got to know these things. And I wanted to champion this kind of like, I love the underdog story. I always love an underdog and I love that fighter, but some people adopt a technology very quickly, for example, you know, whether that be crypto, whether that be marketing online or whatever it may be. And other people don't. They don't know how to do it. And so they get paralyzed. And it's like, how do I unparalyze those people? How do I get them to come to me and say, do you know what? It was that 15 minutes in that conversation that unlocked the thing that has always been locked.
But let me ask you, would you have had that instinct and wanted to advocate for that person if you weren't out and about talking to those people at conferences and events and... Like, because you had to choose that person.
Yeah, but I think I'm a salesperson at heart, and so I don't understand why sales is so difficult for people because I think selling's really easy. I teach it to people over and over and over again. The very, very basics.
So what is it like? Do you think you'd have been able to advocate for that person if you weren't out and about at conferences and meeting people in real life?
Well, I think I'm a salesperson at heart, and I've worked with salespeople over the years, trained so many of them, and I think I've seen so many salespeople fail for stuff that they didn't need to fail with
Because they didn't have the tactics. Like, that's the reason why you're pushing Daniel.
Yeah.
Now, you also said as well that it's an episode where you learned a lot. So if he went that tactical by your request, what did you learn that day from that episode?
Again, I think I learned again because I have these same, like everybody else, I have these walls that I put in front of myself as to why I can't or won't or shouldn't do something, but they're just different to other people. And so I was trying to get myself over those steps. I make content all the time, okay, and some of it hits and some of it misses, and every time it misses, it punches me in the stomach.
Right.
I was showing literally 3 new starters in my office today, my LinkedIn. And I was like, this is what you have to do on LinkedIn. If you want to get recognized on LinkedIn, produce content. And I'm scrolling through different posts. And one of the new starters went, well, yeah, but that's only got 2 comments on. And I was like, oh, he noticed it. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. And I went through the whole sale of why that doesn't matter and whatnot. But that's how he saw it. And then we scrolled through some more, and there were some with, lots of impressions, some with hardly any impressions. And he's like, oh, your videos don't seem to work so well from your podcast on LinkedIn. And I'm like, you going for me, mate? But it made me really think about that kind of stuff. And so
I would say that's, it's interesting that people say that, because I bet you that person hasn't got a ton of momentum on social media, if I was to guess. And sometimes
has 0. He has 0.
There you go. And here's what I would say to people that think that way, is that sometimes it's okay to not see the wood for the trees. It's okay. Like, it's okay to not look at an individual piece of wood and be like, this has got 2, this has got the... I think the value is when they go to Spencer's posts and they see that there's 70 of them there. Well, that's 70 more than somebody who's got 0. Now, even if every single one only has 2 views, what it shows is the intention to add value to people online, not the need for attention. And I think that's a 2026 plus 27, 28 world, is people need to move in content with intention rather than attention, because all attention isn't good attention, as we've seen. So that's a really, really interesting point. So Daniel Priestley, another one in the vein of like where you walked away and you feel like you learned a lot.
Tyler Denk.
Okay, yeah.
He was really valuable. He came on talking about emails, and he just said some really valuable stuff, and it's stuff we don't think about. And he gave case studies, and I love it when people give me a case study. So he talked about the case study of Facebook and Coca-Cola, how they built up a huge Coca-Cola Facebook page, which disappeared overnight. And there were 6 million, 60 million, 600 million. I don't know what the number was, but it was a huge number. And he was like, Spence, why social media when emails everybody gets? Now, I agree they don't open them. He said, but you post something on social media and 1 or 2 or 3% of your audience is seeing it. You send an email to everyone in your email database, they're all seeing it. Now, why don't they open it? He said, because they're boring. You're boring. So stop being boring and start sending interesting emails. And so his whole approach towards that was just like, made me stop and think, hold on a minute, yeah, you're right. A lot of people poo-poo the whole email thing. That's because they're not very good at it themselves. But the people that kill it with emails will never poo-poo it, because they'll say that's your database. It's like sending a text message to everyone in your phone book. No one's taken those contacts away from you.
Right.
Now, maybe not everyone will engage.
Yeah.
But if you sent a text message to 2,000 contacts in your phone book, and you sent an email, okay, to 20,000 contacts, that text message would probably hit with more people. You send an email, it's still going to hit more than you sending it out in your content on social media, that you can't guarantee the audience is going to stay, because they could just click unfollow at any time. Okay, as much as people can unsubscribe, have you ever tried unsubscribing successfully? You can't always do that.
It doesn't.
Some emails don't even have an unsubscribe button, so
you're
there. So that was really valuable for me, and I learned a lot there. Some other ones, I remember I learned a lot from Rachel Conlon from Binance. She came on the show and talked marketing, 101 marketing, for a company with 297 million clients.
Wow.
and said, how am I going to get to 600 million? And she gave me a roadmap to do that. And I'm like, holy macaroni. And every single person I have asked since, how many clients do you think Binance has got? Okay. Every single person has not even come fractionally close.
Wow.
So it's staggering, but she gave me a roadmap. So I can't agree how using Chris Hemsworth, as their marketing campaign, had that put Beirut on the map. I thought that was really valuable. Who else taught me? Yeah, I think in lessons, those people are good. Okay, the people that I understand from the world of business that can taught me how they grew a business, how they become successful. Obviously Grant Cardone's been on the show twice, and he's a no holds barred kind of straight talking guy, as you've got to know him like I did. And he was, I had dinner with him and his wife one evening, and he just is exactly the guy that's on camera is exactly the guy that sat with you at dinner.
Yeah.
Okay, he just has a glass of red wine at dinner. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
But he's exactly that guy, and he's so willing to help. John Lee's always been good. He's always been a good teacher as well.
Yeah.
I think when you finish an episode with John Lee, I think people have got something that they can sit and listen to and make notes and use.
Yeah.
So that's been good as well. I'm trying to think of others. I think that there are, if you think about, all of the guests that we had from Najahi over the years, do you remember when we had all of those speakers that were essentially teaching people how to do stuff? I think that there were a few people in there. Lisa Nichols made me cry my face off when she.
Yeah, she's one of one, Lisa.
Man, I cried my eyes out when I sat talking to her, and I literally on the podcast. Les Brown, these types of people really kind of know how to touch your soul.
Yeah,
and inspire you in a moment, And so, people like Lisa Nichols are really good. Crikey, there's a bunch for you.
Well, let's talk about zooming out. For those people that are using this episode as a gateway drug to your other episodes, let's say this is the first episode they're listening to, and they don't have context on who Spencer Lodge is and the rest of your life, perhaps now's a really good opportunity to share where you are in 2026 and the role that content plays interwoven, because you have your philanthropy work. We covered already that you've experienced success in business for a couple of decades now. In many ways, there's an argument that you don't even really need to be well known on social media, but here you are. So for a bit of context, when you're not producing content and you're chairman, CEO Spencer, what are you doing? And then let me know what role content's playing in that. And it doesn't have to just be the podcast, which we're talking about a lot today, but all the other things you do, the updates in the morning, trying to get people in the gym and so on.
At the end of the day, I have businesses, and I've learned through my own businesses that there are lots of people who are very fearful of making content. They're very fearful of telling others about their day for the fear of being judged, talking about their products or their services online. And so I feel like it's my duty to play a role in that with my businesses. And if I end up having to be the face of, one of the most boring subjects in the world, which is insurance, then so be it. If I have to be the face of well-being or the face of wealth management on social media, then so be it. I don't think any owner of any business should take that lightly. I don't care whether you're a millionaire or multimillionaire, you've got $100 million business. There is many examples of people that made a lot of money and lost it. So then where'd you go?
I mean, I've struggled with that as well. Up until this year, you would rarely see me on camera next to a client. Like we might take a picture and post on stories, but something like this I would never do. And I think the reason for that is that your ego tells you can pull both off separately. Your ego tells you can have an alter ego. And when I'm doing my content stuff, I'm the content guy, but I would never say, we've supplied Aldar or we've done this. Or in closed rooms, like when you're having business conversations. But I think that is something that a lot of people I think could shatter in people's brains and be like, you've just got to own it. You've just got to own what you're doing. And I think you did that from the beginning, so you've never really known any different.
I've got my mum to thank for them.
How so?
I don't just have my mum. I have a few people that 15 years ago, when the internet was this newer kind of thing, or maybe even longer, 20 years ago even, if somebody wrote something about you online or gave you a cynical or a nasty or a negative comment online, I remember it used to really, really hurt. Like, really hurt.
Hurt, not offend. Hurt.
Hurt
Like
my
you-
feelings.
wow.
And then there were these websites that came up that were websites that were essentially extortion sites. So these sites came up where people could go and they could, without any justification, they could, and anonymously, they could go on and say, Spencer Lodge is this, he's done that, he's done that. And the only way you could get that content taken down was to pay the administrator of the website.
Wow.
And so then what happened is the whole world of reputation management became a thing. And there were lots of companies that started popping up. We know we'll manage your reputation. We know you've got some negative stuff about you online. We want to push it down the Google rankings and so that you don't get to see that. And it was really difficult for me because I was at this early stage and someone would read something online. What did they say? People believe Google before they believe their mum.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but your mum knows. Yeah, but we believe Google. And so people were reading stuff on websites and that was really damaging stuff because people would read it and they'd think it was true.
Mm.
They wouldn't come and say, hey, I've seen this stuff. Is this true?
Mm.
They would just think it's true. And regardless of the fact. And my mum, I remember my mum sat down with me and she said to me, have you ever been to a public toilet when you really needed to go to the bathroom urgently? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, and you sat down on the toilet and you shut the bathroom door. Okay, the what do you call it? The cubicle door. And she goes, what was on the back of the door? You know, John was here.
Yeah.
F you, you know,
Yeah.
engraved in with someone's key. They've engraved a willy,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like that, you know, the love hearts, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, anyone can do that. That's just a wall that people are writing whatever they want. It doesn't have to be true. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And she said, isn't the internet like that? Isn't that a place where anybody can write whatever they want? She said, well, if anybody can write whatever they want, they can write the truth or they can write a lie, and there's no one telling them they can't.
Wow.
She said, the only way you get rid of what's on the back of the toilet cubicle door is by taking the door and repainting it and putting it back up, which you never do. You can't take the stuff that's on the internet. She said, so someone could write something very nasty about you and you can't do anything about it. So she said, why worry?
That's genius. Because what do they say? They say, wrote it on my Facebook wall or now my Instagram comments. It's a perfect analogy.
And then the situation that happened many years ago with Elton John, the story that was out about Elton John, again, part of it was true, which I'm happy to admit. Part of it was, or most of it was fake. And I went to Elton's house for breakfast. And I sat with him because the doctor used to treat my back. And I sat with him, I had breakfast with him. And I said, Elton, I've got a problem, mate. There's people that have written this kind of stuff about me. You know, the Mirror, the Star, the Sun, or whatever it is. And bear in mind, this is more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
They've written this stuff about me. And, you know, it's really damaging, mate. And he just looked at me while we had beans on toast. He literally looked at me and he went, welcome to my world.
Wow.
And he was just, for him, he was just like, I have to live with that every day, son.
Right.
You know, that's my life.
Did that then allow you to own your own
But
identity?
it just enabled me to not fear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my mum kept saying to me, repeat after me, what you think of me is none of my business. What you think of me is none of my business. Say it, Spence. I need you to say it out loud. Don't hum it. Say it. And I'm like, Mum, what you think of me is none of my business. Again. She's like, it's none of your business because you can't control it. Stop trying to.
Yeah.
What anybody thinks about you is their own to own. It's not yours.
I never knew your mum gave you that. I've heard you say that many times, especially in the context of social media and when we talked about like brand positioning and things like that. And you were like, obviously you listen and you execute, but there was a boundary where you were like, yeah, well, that's beyond my control, so I'm not going to try and control that. It's quite, it was quite an advanced way of thinking, actually, to be honest.
If people want to judge me negatively by what somebody else has written about me online without verifying whether it's factual or not, well, fuck off.
Right.
I don't care. I really, if your brain can't think further than to be curious to find out whether it's true by speaking to the accused, then you're not someone I want in my life anyway, so move along.
Do you think differently about how you make content about the good work that you do versus the commercial stuff that you put out? And do you think you've done a good job of sharing with the world the good work that you've done? Use any example, because there's plenty.
I don't. What the kids?
Let's start with the kids. Let's start with all the kids that you've sponsored and you've used your influence to get, uniforms, money, food. Have you done a good enough job of the work that you've done?
I jump between the two, and I'll tell you for why.
Okay.
It's because of one individual, George Michael,
Mm-hmm.
who gave huge amounts of money to charity on the promise that nobody told anybody it was from him.
Mm-hmm. I saw that in a documentary recently,
which I find really powerful. And then also, I've seen online where people, when there's guys make videos and there'll be a tramp in the street or a homeless guy in the street, and they'll go and cut their hair, get them a shave, get them some food, get them dressed. And it's a lovely piece of content. It's beautiful. But you see all these people going, why do you need to film it? Why not just be kind?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a part of me that's like, being with them feeds my soul. I don't do it to tell a story around it. I do it because it makes me feel good to do it. And so sharing it as part of content, or whether I've done a good enough job of that, I can't possibly be the judge of that, because I don't really care.
Have you got any role models in your life that you've seen behave in a positive way towards other people?
Well,
and help people?
For many years, Tony was a great role model. For many years, the person that's impacted me the most, without a shadow of a doubt, is Maria Conceição. She's had such a profound impact on my life. And then when we made the documentary, Hannah Baddy as well, they just had such a huge impact on my life. And then, they're out there in life. They're like the world's good people. And they're good just because they're good. All right? They don't need to be told they're good. They don't need to be recognized for being good. They just come from a good place. And that's not most people. Most people have goodness in them, and most people have kindness in them. So I'm not saying people are bad, but there are very few people that are just to their core good and have the absolute right set of morals and standards and integrity that is impossible to shake them from.
But I have to admit, I did set a bit of a booby trap for you there. Because, as you mentioned, Maria had a documentary, content, her book, content, her social stuff about the magnificent stuff she'll do week in, weekend out, content. Tony Robbins, lovely guy, don't get me wrong, but one of the biggest self-promoters of all time.
Yeah.
Content, he's known for spending more on TV adverts, TV advertorials than anybody in history on an individual basis. The reason why I make this point now is that their content inspired you. So by you saying, part of you feels like you want to do it and not make a big deal about it, also robs 17-year-old Spencer right now, who's in, Morocco or Berlin or Walthamstow, from getting the inspiration that he's supposed to get from you.
Yeah. But how much? What do you do? You can't be right all the time, and you can't solve the problem all the time, and you can't hit everyone all of the time.
Yeah, I mean, you've got TV shows and other things. Are we allowed to say that? Yeah, you've got TV shows and other things like that. So I mean, it's not as if you're not making content, but I don't want you to do those things and make those things with the philosophy of I'm doing them, but there's a world where I'd prefer to not do them. I think if you sink in that I'm proactive about doing it in real life, and I'm also philosophically okay with doing it and happy to do it, I think you'll be a lot calmer. Because right now,
I feel like I am doing it in real life.
You are,
I'm
but
not making it, not necessarily focused on making content around it, but I'm doing it because it matters to me.
No, of course. So you're putting out all these TV shows. You're giving these TV producers and movie producers your time, so you can take them into your world and show some of the things that you do. But also, what I was saying is the bit that feels out of sync is when you're like, I really like the fact that George Michael was like, discreet about it, and I was like, you know what? The same way that you're flagrant in a nice way about what you do in the business world, being equally flagrant about all the good that you create for people, whether it's all the orphans that you've helped or even up and coming entrepreneurs like me that land in the country and within a couple of years we hang out and we do what we do. You being somebody who loves case studies yourself by your own admission would probably even make an even bigger impact by sharing some more of your case studies. Yeah. Just a food for thought, maybe a conversation for another pod.
Yeah,
And this is giving the audience an insight into our dinner time debates and things that happen over the table anyway, right? So something to think about. Right. Something to think about. onto lighter stuff. The podcast today has changed from this, the Spencer Lodge podcast. I still remember choosing this font, to then Unscripted with Spencer Lodge, to now Made in Dubai, of which you are somewhat of a guest on your own podcast today.
Yes.
Dealing with one pivot when it comes to, from a naming perspective, is a lot. You've done two. Whilst at the same time, in parallel, you've changed teams. You had me in the team for the first maybe 70, 80 episodes, and then you've had 2 or 3 teams since. How has it been dealing with name changes? What was the reason behind that? And then how is it when you change content teams? Because you are now one of the de facto better content creators in the UAE. So I'm sure a lot of those people that are watching you right now are like, well, hang on a second. I'm thinking about hiring a team or firing a team or changing my name. All of these things are nerve-wracking. You've done them in parallel. Can you talk about the journey to those name changes and those team changes and how you dealt with it as an operator?
So at the beginning of the journey, you named it. I didn't name it. You said it's going to be called the Spencer Lodge Podcast.
Yeah.
You know?
It is what it is on the tin. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, if that's what it's called. Who was I to tell you whether that was a good or a bad idea? So that ran for a number of years. And then
I think I actually have a picture, which I don't want to commit to, so we might want to edit it out. But I think I have a picture of the first time that you were writing down what you were going to say. You were on a table, and there was another table on top of the table, which came to your chest height. And you were just like scribbling on a piece of paper, and that was the genesis of everything. But if we don't have it, you can cut that out. But sorry, you were saying.
there is that picture somewhere.
Yeah, I texted it on your birthday last year, but I hope it's still not WhatsApps, yeah.
It started off as that, and it was that for the most of the time. And then I think this is what I've learned about agencies. Most agencies have a shelf life, not because of ability, but because of creativity. And I think they run out of ideas, or they run out of enjoying it enough to be inspired to come up with new ideas. So you get to this kind of a few years in of this staleness that exists. And what we're all actually doing is going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to work every day and do my job. And so I have all these people around me doing the podcast, and I'm trusting that they're good at that. But if they lose their impetus, then I lose mine as well. And I've noticed this kind of like ebbs and flows along the way.
Yeah, you got to refresh and bring in fresh ideas, because the same person you brought in for fresh ideas eventually becomes part of the furniture.
And what I've also learned is I need those people to be here with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's way better to. I hate Zooms.
Mm-hmm.
I hate long distance meetings. I hate sitting on a laptop with a screen of 6 people sat there. It's just, to me, it's pointless, because I don't get my energy from that. I get my energy from sitting down and, the hands, the arms, the eyes, the non-verbal stuff that's all going on at the same time is feeding me. So I've learned that so if anyone's going to start doing a podcast, then remember that there might be a shelf life. Even if you employ those people directly rather than an agency, the same rules apply. That's the first thing. Second thing, I don't know why we called it Unscripted.
Okay.
It was a conversation that took place between Sabine and Sam and myself, and it was like, let's rename it and going in another direction, because we kind of changed directions along the way. And I know this might sound weird as hell for people that might be watching or listening to this. I've always felt the podcast, I've always felt of it as a failure. And because I've always felt of it as a failure, I've got frustrated and I've changed direction. This not working, change direction, rather than just being straight. The only thing that's been consistent in the podcast from day one is me, as in me as a physical human being, not even what I say, because that's not been consistent. And so we changed it to kind of freshen it up, give it a new look and whatnot. And I don't think it worked.
Mm-hmm.
It went from the Spencer Lodge podcast to Unscripted with Spencer Lodge. And it was just like, whoop-de-doo. And I remember it was the guy that does the sport on 103.8, Chris McCarty.
Oh, yeah.
Chris McCarty sent me a WhatsApp. He's like, stole my name, because his show's called Unscripted. He was like, stole my name. That's original.
What?
And I was like, oh, I know he was joking.
Yeah,
He didn't mean anything by it. But it just sat there with me, and I was like, oh, boo-booed again, haven't I?
Oh, no.
And so the getting to the point of it being called Made in Dubai was, this has been my home for nearly 21 years. And so arguably most of my professional career, no, not most of it, but half of my professional career has been here. telling the stories about people that have made it in Dubai now seems more relevant than ever, because in the past, being made in Dubai didn't seem like a thing, not unless you were, the founder of Lulu hypermarket in 1974, or something like that. And so there weren't that many people, but also there weren't as many eyes on Dubai. Dubai has exploded, as you know, and particularly in the last 5 years has gone bonkers. And so the rest of the world is looking at Dubai. You talk to an American, and Americans don't know anywhere outside of America apart from Dubai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and it's Dubai, okay? And Dubai is a country.
Yeah, it's true.
At least it's progress.
Yeah.
But in Europe, everybody knows Dubai. In the Far East, everybody knows Dubai now, whereas maybe they didn't before. And arguably, I think people now know Abu Dhabi. Okay, folks, let's talk about real estate. Now, a recent partnership that we've just established on the podcast is with AYS Developers. Luxury properties with high-end finishes from people that really understand the subject. Often in Dubai, you'll find stuff that is maybe substandard. With AYS Developers, you're not going to see that. You're going to see fantastic properties that you can buy, you can invest in, you can make a home on Dubai Islands and other places too. So go visit aysdevelopers.ae and check them out. I promise you it'll be worth the trip.
It's a fact. I think a lot of that work is to do with the tourism team. They're very impressive.
Yeah.
And the way that they integrate through the real estate developers, the properties they bring in, like UFC and Disney and F1. Abu Dhabi is a masterclass.
I think I agree with you. So this is what I think. I think that Abu Dhabi is 7 or 8 years behind Dubai in terms of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I couldn't call it made in the UAE or made in the United Arab Emirates, because although people will know Dubai and will have heard of Abu Dhabi, nobody knows the UAE. The United Arab Emirates. They messed up that name. Too long.
You reckon?
Too long, because the UAE is like 3 vowels. It's like being on countdown, isn't it?
But it's like USA though. I mean, it still works, but it needs a longer branding machine behind it, which the USA's had.
But name another United. You've got the United Kingdom is 2 UK. Okay?
Yeah.
Nobody really calls it that.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And then you've got the USA. What else have you got out there? RSK. It's like not really.
Yeah.
So the UAE gets lost a little bit in it. But guess what? Doesn't matter, because we've got Dubai and we've got Abu Dhabi. So hence the reason made in Dubai. And I just wanted to lean more into telling stories about people and success in Dubai, not just business, people that have done great things, so that the rest of the world can look at these stories in Dubai and go, okay. And I get some, I don't know, so whether it's facts or figures or whether it's ideas or whether it's belief. Okay, that this is a real place and there's a lot going on here.
Yeah. I think that's. I agree with that philosophy. I've been saying to people a lot of the last 12 months, now that we've seen Dubai just hit this insane kind of like white hot energy that it's got at the moment on the global stage, that Dubai is actually the biggest celebrity I've ever worked with. Like, I've worked with everybody, but Dubai is bigger than any individual celebrity that I've ever worked with, because I had this very interesting thing that happened the other day. There's this massive, incredibly impressive collective membership in London called Founders. So it's FOUNDE. Oh, no, there's no E. The E's an X, RS, right? Put together by these former media guys, Kalpesh and a few other people.
Yeah, I know it.
They hired, you know him, right? Very impressive.
No, I know
guy.
Founders. I don't know him.
Yeah, so it's him and his team, and very impressive bunch. They hired out the Natural History Museum for their Christmas party. I'm not a member of Founders, but he invited me down because he's very kind. I've got my friends, your friends. And I managed to land in the country 24 hours before his event. I messaged him. I was like, if it's not too late, I'd still love to come. Went down there, and I'm in the 3rd decade of my career now. The first 10 years, people would come up to me and ask me about musicians, music, parties, all that kind of stuff. Oh, I saw you met Pharrell Williams. I saw you met Amy Winehouse. They see it on Facebook. The second 10 years of my career, when I pivoted to content, people would ask me about social media, content, podcasts. When I went to this black tie event that Founders did at Natural History Museum, for the first time ever, people came up to me and were like, yo, you Raj Kotecha? I was like, yeah, man, what's up? He was like, they're like, oh, man, I love following your stuff online, man. All the stuff you do about Dubai and Dubai and Dubai and Dubai. I was like, and then I have a business partner there, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, yo, can we just step outside for a second? I want to just tell you something. I was like, yo, everybody tonight that's come tonight has not asked me about content or music. They all want to know about Dubai. And that is so real, because everybody that's in Founders pretty much is a successful CEO or founder. And so to have all eyes on Dubai, I think you've made the right decision. You really have. And I don't think that anybody has the ability or the agenda to tell stories the way that you want to tell them, having already done nearly 400 episodes before you even changed it to Made in Dubai. So I really hope that it's the skyrocket that you deserve for this next stage of your journey.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope.
Let's hope indeed. Okay, let's get into some other bits and pieces today, because we have still got so much to cover. If you were to tell people about how you were made in Dubai, what would you say were the big kind of pivotal points? Because you've actually lived in many Dubais. 21 years out of a country that's 52, 53 years old. It's a solid chunk. What has Dubai given you, and what have you given Dubai back?
I think Dubai, when I first came here, I was like everybody else, coming here for a few years, so I didn't have any real strategy around it. But what has it given me? All of the stereotypical things that everybody else will say, the safety, the ease of the airport, the travel and whatnot. But it's given me the opportunity to work with really, really cool people. And I think that's when we look at our work, I think when we spend so much time doing it, having the ability to work with really great people that are from lots of different parts of the world has always been really interesting for me to do. And so it gave me that, it gave me success. I really, Raj, really struggle to talk about success in any way. It's it's really uncomfortable, because I don't look at myself as having any form of success. And so
it depends how you're defining success.
Define it in any way you want. Okay.
Well, okay, let's define it as like the size of the company you've built and the wealth that you've accrued personally. That automatically puts you in the top 2% of expats that have come, and maybe top 1% of expats that have come from the UK.
But I'm not a fraction of what I could have been. So that's the problem I've got, is that I look at where I am and I'm nowhere near where I could have been. And so that always eats away at me. So when people say to me success, it makes my skin crawl a little bit. Mm-hmm. And when I look at people that have impacted me the most, it's never been around money. As a Maria, she's more successful than I'll ever be. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like the problem Dubai has caused me is not having the ability to stay focused on one thing and absolutely nail it. Mm. I built a company that I was one of the shareholders in when I first came here. That was incredibly successful. I left that business under a cloud because of a number of different reasons at the time. I then took a year out, created terrible anxiety and depression and suicide thoughts and plans. I then healed from that. I then started a company, and I then stepped away from that company and handed that company to my business partner to run, which she did, which I believed was successfully for a number of years. And then, without saying anything bad about her, because it's really not fair to, that didn't work out. I've gone back in to run those businesses now, have to grow them to sale. I invested in a number of businesses here and overseas, and the ones overseas did better than the ones I invested in here. And so when I look at success, if you want to measure people in financial success, I don't have any of it compared to what I'm comparing to. Do I have it compared to a guy that works on a building site? Yes, but we've all got the comparisons that we use in our own brain. Have I been successful at anything? Well, I started a podcast. I don't think that's successful. So I find it really, really hard. My social media, I've got 50,000 followers on Instagram. Doesn't really seem to change. Okay, I haven't really grown anywhere there. So when people talk about these types of things, it's really difficult for me.
But okay, let me just push back then real quick. As somebody who I would say is a grounded person who doesn't really need for anything, this paradigm of comparison is an interesting one, because you do have financial success. You have like quantitative internet success. You've got the subscribers. I feel like if this number, which is 100,000 followers on YouTube, became 1 million, I don't think the first 10 minutes of me walking into your villa here would have been any different. I don't think the time we hang out would be any different. But this thorn of comparison still sits there. So if I can, and you commit to it, you commit to saying what I'm going to ask you to say loud, then I'll take a page out of Mrs. Lodge's book. Other people's success is none of my business. Go.
Yeah, other people's successes. I don't have a problem with other people's successes.
But you said compared to what I could have been.
Yeah, that's what I could have been, not what they are.
But you'd have followed their rank. You'd have followed them up to the Tony Robbins and the Oprahs of the world. But I don't think you'd be any happier, because it doesn't get much better than this, Spencer. Like, I'm sure you have access to all the best things. You're well known in real life and online. You're not a material person. You got a beautiful house, beautiful car, beautiful everything. But I mean, what happens? What happens when this becomes the gold one and it's 1 million subscribers? And what happens if there's 2 more zeros in any of your bank accounts?
Well, again, when I look at when you talk about success and what you've been successful at, it's like, what is the measurement? What actually do you measure?
You need to answer that first, right?
Exactly.
Before you say you've not hit it.
I measure, and when I look at what success is, I can tell you for sure. For me, success isn't money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, success must be recognition. Success must be the impact you have on others.
Yeah.
And so being recognized for what you do and having a powerful impact on others are probably 2 of the most important things. Recognition. I don't need everyone to give me a pat on the back. In fact, I'm quite uncomfortable if everyone wants to give me a pat on the back. You probably know that anyway. But it's like, what impact did you have? I'm 55 years old now, okay? And Gary Vaynerchuk talks about regret. And I'm at a place where I tell you what I'm not good at: making really good choices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've learned that about myself. But
there's 300 financial advisors within 20 miles of here that started off doing what you're doing and haven't moved a fraction of the way that you've moved. So if we're talking about impact, still on a relative basis, you have. And I think perhaps the vector that we're looking at it is the one that we should change. You said earlier on about like the podcast and you feeling like it's a failure. Ironically, I think what you've done with this podcast and what you will do by episode 500 and 700 and 1200 is that I think you're planting the seeds for a tree under which you will never benefit from the shade. I think long after you're gone, and when they investigate people that came here in the first 50 years of the UAE or the first 70 years of the UAE, and the UAE at that point is 180, 250 years old, they're going to need case studies. And so the irony of you being where you've got to is that you'll probably never feel the impact of it. And that's sad. But along the way, you get to drive some nice cars and eat some nice pasta, and that's not a terrible way to live either, is it?
No, as Jimmy Carr said on Stephen's podcast, they described the meaning of life, and Jimmy Carr said it's 5 words: enjoying the passage of time. That's it. And so, yeah, like with all of these things. But this isn't a counselling session.
This, even though we have wonderful effort that's been put into, the pregame of today's show, I feel like this is the first time that we've ever captured like a real raw conversation, just me and you talking. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to be prerequisite knowledge for creators that are on their journey, because now there'll be people that are like, I'm at 370 plus episodes too, and I feel this way. And it's like, well, Spencer's already spoken about it. Which again is you serving others.
There is an incredible fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
Like an anxiety leading immensely overwhelming fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at people that aren't making it and they look at me and they think I have made it with podcasts or whatever it may be, I'm like, I feel a failure and I fear failure every single day. And so I have so much empathy. I was with Mo Vlogs the other day, and we were sitting talking about what's the questions everybody asks him, and they all ask him the same question: how do you get to 30 million followers? And everyone asks the same question, and he's got the same answer for everyone. And he's like, make the content. Make it every day. He said, Spencer, if you actually went and looked at every piece of content I've ever made, you had the time to do it, which you won't, but if you did, he said 80% of it, you will look at it and say, that's shit. There's only 20% of it that's really good. And everybody, if they want to get 30 million followers, has to make so much content that the 20% that's really good is enough to get 30 million followers.
Pareto's principle, almost exactly to the percentage.
And I really, and when he said that nobody is willing to do the work, and I think that's one thing that keeps me going, because I'm willing to do the work, even if I'm doing it badly or if I'm not doing it as well as I could be doing it, I'm willing to do the work. You'll never find me giving up. You'll never find me throwing the towel in. Boy, do I want to sometimes, but you won't find me giving up. It's just, and some other people have said along the way, giving up is sometimes the right thing to do. And I get that. I look at the amount of, I've just taken the podcast, the amount of money I've spent on this podcast over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, in real terms, how much money is millions of dollars. You know that I've got a whole team of people around me. There's mouths to feed and everything else that go with that. Millions of dollars. And I have never made my money back. In podcasts, you either get a big audience on social media, which pays you a fee, which I never got, okay, or you get sponsors, which I have now, which obviously I'm in a position now where it doesn't cost me anything, and we have the sponsors that pay for it, which is great. But, okay, all of those millions that have been spent over the years, if it wasn't for the fact that I love doing it, and I absolutely get a massive kick out of producing a podcast episode, and Alex chasing me down for the micros, Spence approved this and approved that, and looking at it and going, shit, good, shit, okay. Or the moments that I have with Alex after the episode where we sit and just talk about that person, and that person kind of like was up, he was cool, wasn't he? Do you remember what he said about that? Those little moments. Or my natural curiosity about how somebody can create something out of nothing, or whatever it is they do, or they can impact the world in the way that they do, for me is the reason that I do it, more so than anything else. But if I was talking to Dodge Woodall the other day, who's got Eventful Lives in the UK, and he said you'll never get rich out of a podcast, and he's got a successful podcast in the UK. You'll never get rich out of a podcast. And I looked at him as he said it, and I'm like, oh, you are so wrong. Because there are plenty of people getting rich out of having a podcast. You've only got to ask the number one guy.
But that's not plenty, is it? I mean, if you go from Joe Rogan to Stephen Bartlett, even Stephen Bartlett, okay, if you add up all of his sponsorship money, it might be quite material. But Joe Rogan had that windfall of the Spotify deal that was like a balloon moment of cash that went into his business. But for the rest of them, once you get past like podcaster number, 30 or 40 on a global stage, they're probably just barely making ends meet, because there's not many people that get the Spotify deal, or soon to be the Netflix deals, as Netflix starts absorbing podcasts in. And so I think you don't fail until you quit. And this fear of failure will only be realized if you quit. So that begs the question, twice a year you felt like quitting. We're probably around 15 moments of that monkey jumping on your back. Why did you never quit? You don't quit, but for this, why did you never quit?
Because I never wanted to be called a quitter. I never wanted to be accused of being something, and I needed, because of the fear.
But what other people think about you is not your business.
Not so much about what other people think about me. There's the fear of I know if I quit, I failed.
The fear of you labeling yourself.
Yeah.
So whilst you don't care what anybody else thinks about Spencer Lodge, you very much care what you think about yourself. And that's the person you've got to go to bed with every night.
My mirror.
Pretty deep. Pretty deep. Well, I'm glad you didn't quit, man. I'm really glad you didn't quit. Let's talk to Spencer 2019, shall we? He's starting off on his journey. He's brand new, but of course the year is 2026. So you have to update the advice that you'd give to that person. That advice could be centered around monetization, motivation, or anything that exists in between in that spectrum. You're talking to Spencer, who's heading into episode 1 right now, 2026. What advice are you going to give him if you've only got a minute or two before the camera?
Episode 1.
Episode 1. He's
2026.
2026, but he has the same knowledge, experience, and capability that you had in 2019. So he's pretty much new to it.
Find a niche.
Great. Tell me more.
Don't be all things to all people. It doesn't work. Find a niche. Get focused, okay? Find a niche and stick to it and become the legendary expert of that thing.
Like the Huberman way that he did it.
The go-to person for knowledge, information, expertise on that thing. I didn't do that, okay? And had I done that, I think that the podcast would have been all things to all people in that space, whatever that space may be. It could be the cake making niche. Sorry, it could be anything you want it to be. And I think that you need to have a niche. Now, when I look at the bits of the podcast over the years I've enjoyed the most, I think what my niche would end up being.
Tell me.
Okay, real stories of real lives. People that have been through unimaginable pain and injustice, and yet found a way to forgive and find peace. Those types of stories inspire the hell out of me. And if not, it would have been business, okay? But the business that I know. So, for example, with insurance and wealth, and it would be all related to that, okay? And that's what I'd have been. So that the whole world knew, if you came to listen to me, Spencer would make sure that you'd know what to do with your money. If you came to listen to me, Spencer would know, okay, what you would do with insurance, okay? That would
like a Martin's Money Tips kind of character.
Type of character, yeah.
Would Spencer ever start a second podcast knowing what you know?
Spencer's thinking about it right now.
In a niche?
In a niche.
Okay. When are you going to be ready to talk about that?
Don't know.
Okay.
Literally, it's in my head at the moment.
Amazing. Well, you've literally never told me about that. And I want to hear about that even as your friend. Speaking of things that you never told anybody about, embarrassing moments or things that have gone wrong. We've seen bloopers online before, but I heard a rumor in the prep call about this, that you once actually fell asleep during a podcast. You know, Stephen Bartlett recently had a video go viral, talk about he did all of his research on a guest and the different guest walked in and he had to freestyle the whole thing. And then that guest found that clip and realized it was him and then did a reaction video to it. What was the equivalent for you?
So a couple of situations. I had one person, I'm not telling you who it was, that I was filming 3 episodes a day for a week, and it was on day 5. It was the last episode. It was like the 4 p.m. Friday episode, and I was wiped out. I'd been under the bright lights all week, and so my eyes were sore, and part of the story I'd already heard because I'd consumed a lot of content on it, and I slowly got very heavy eyelids.
Wow.
And I didn't fall asleep completely, but I fell into the mic. And as I fell into the mic, the guy, it wasn't here, it was in London. The guy here...
this guest saw you?
Yeah. He saw me, he said, why don't you go and wash your face and freshen up a little bit? And I did exactly that.
Wow.
And we...
Did you feel any type of way, embarrassed, or that you might have offended him?
A complete idiot. But he was a very kind human being, and he was very forgiving.
Right.
So I did that. I had a guy that was the biggest baseball card dealer in America. I filmed a whole episode with him without pressing record.
Wow.
And I asked to film it again, said there was a technical problem, and he said no.
Oh, man.
I was gutted about that.
What happened between you being gutted about that and you being able to laugh about it now? What evolution happened, or what acceptance did you get?
It was just like, you don't need to tell me I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. I know I'm an idiot. And so I make peace with that pretty quickly. It's just when I reached out again and he said no.
Yeah.
I was just like, I would do exactly the same.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You wasted my time. But there's been those embarrassing moments. I've had moments where I haven't had any notes on the guest. So I've had exactly what Stephen's had.
Yeah.
Okay. I printed off a set of notes. I spent the evening before studying the notes. Then the next day for the podcast, sit down, different person sat there.
Yeah. I remember you did that. We did a tax special, you and I. We won't reveal the person's name, but we did a tax special when corporation tax was being announced. And you were like, I don't want to do it. And then you did it and you didn't enjoy it. And I don't think it ever saw the light of day. You were one of the main tax experts in this country, and I get it. It was a wordy episode, and nobody had really started talking about tax. What's interesting about 2026 is that tax people are the ultimate like revenge of the nerds moment. Like for the last 15 years, it was tech people, like the nerds on computers, that became super hot CEOs. But in England right now, like tax influencers, they've become huge as well. But I do remember you doing that episode and really like you hadn't bought into it. And then everything that came downstream from that was effectively stuff that would just end up on the cutting room floor. I pitched you the person. I brought him in.
No, but there was another episode that you did. You did for my 100th episode. Don't say who it was, because I'll tell you in a minute.
No, I love it. I remember, of course. I wanted to talk about it on today's podcast.
Well, I wasn't prepared for that.
No, but and I actually wanted to end with that as a compliment for you. And we probably are coming to the end of the show right now, but I did want to share that story as a personal story. So this is really a wonderful moment. So we did dozens and dozens of episodes as we got this show off the ground, as well as all your other social media and content for that period of time as your brand was building. But I actually messaged you and I said, I know that episode 100 is coming up. And even though we're not your producers anymore, would you let me guest produce this episode for you? And you very kindly said yes. And then you'd always talked about, and I felt had a really good knowledge about Neil Patel, the digital marketer from NP Digital. And through one coincidence or another through the circuit, me and him got connected. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey man, I'm asking for a favor for this person, but I believe there's a very good reason in this favor. I'm not bringing you a newbie. I'm not asking you to do episodes like 1 to 6 of this person's episode where they don't know the head from their ass. He's actually going to do episode 100, and he's always been a big appreciator of your work. Neil Patel, who's the nicest dude ever, I've seen him since as well, said yes. Now, the setup here, we take over your studio. You're not in your studio. I get Neil on Zoom for this remote podcast. I then cover the laptop with a fabric.
Tea towel.
Yeah, right. And you're being filmed sitting down, not knowing who you're about to interview for a signature milestone podcast. Not many people enter the 3-digit club when it comes to podcasts, right? Episode 100. And we threw off the towel. You were so nice and gracious to him. He was lovely back. You were really genuinely excited because it was another moment. And you absolutely nailed it. You asked him about his kids, his career, everything about him you knew. And you just absolutely took it home. And that for me was a massive moment. Like very different to the big stages and the Bayouts and the celebrity stuff that you're doing. Because I was like, yo, you might not be able to catch this guy off guard again now. Like he's become, like he's transformed. He's turned into the person that could be ready at 4 a.m. in the morning if you put an ice bucket on him. It was a wonderful moment. And shout out to Neil for doing that. But like, yeah, really one of my favorite all-time moments from like the show for sure. But your evolution as a creator. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it was so nice.
Yeah, that was a very special moment. That was.
I feel like today's going to be one of those days as well, man. Like yeah. I really enjoyed today. I think the thing that I've learned today, because there was no way that we were going to kind of like make you the guest of Made in Dubai and me as the kind of quasi-host not learn something, is that really this is a game of you versus you. This is golf. You know, you're not competing against anybody else. Although sometimes you might think you are, but it looks like when we peel back the layers here, it really is Spencer versus Spencer and what Spencer thinks of himself when he goes to bed at night. Going into 2026 and further, what are some of the goals and expectations you've got of yourself and this show? Do you have a wish list of things that you'd like to see happen, numbers aside?
There's probably a list of guests that I'd like to have on the show that I haven't had yet, and so that's probably something that's in the works in my mind and on a few notepads somewhere. I just want more people to enjoy it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I want more people to listen to these incredible people that I talk to and either be entertained or learn from them or understand their stories. And just impact for me is really important. You know, I want the world to know about Maria Conceição. I want the world to know about Hannah Vadi. I want the world to know about people that have done such incredible work at protecting people and rescuing people. And make the world a better place. I want the world to understand that kindness can do wonders. And so, yeah, it's just the next stage. If you said to me, you know, what's your next goal? I know 1 million followers. I don't have big enough boobs to be able to get easily 1 million followers, and so I've got to try and find another way of doing it. So,
So looking at all the things that you've achieved, it's taken a ton of effort and skill sets. But would you argue that across this whole journey that kindness is your superpower?
No, kindness isn't my superpower. I wish it was. I really wish it was. I think that if you look at my life's journey, I didn't even understand what that word meant for many years. I think that I've lent into it more as time has gone by and I've got older. But no, it isn't. And boy, if it was.
Did you feel that you started off neutral or unkind, and that's the reason why it was such a journey?
Arrogant and obnoxious. Not necessarily the podcast, but the career.
Did you float away from that, or did you actively have this moment where you realized and then climbed out of that grave?
You get touched by it, and when you get touched by it, you realize what kindness is when you get touched by it. And when you're ready to receive it and be touched by it, you do, and it has an impact on your life. And it had an impact on my life a couple of times over the years, and I realized how important it was.
Any particular kindness role model or somebody that helped you?
There's 3 distinct moments of kindness. And, one is Maria Conceição, and the great work that she's done rescuing all of those children. That was an extreme work of kindness for me.
But how, in terms of the way she inspired you?
No, the way that she sat down and as a woman working on Emirates Airlines, flies into Bangladesh, into Dhaka in the slums, spends 2 days in the slums and says, I need to help. And she flies back to Dubai and sells possessions, then flies back to Dhaka, and she helps and promised to help one family. I mean, wow. And then she spent the next 20 years of her life surrendering everything that she ever knew was going to be part of her life to protect these children and save them from child slave labor. To me, it's like, that's the ultimate.
So she gave up everything, sold all of her possessions.
When a woman a member of Emirates cabin crew flies to Dhaka in Bangladesh, spends 2 days in the slums and sees how people are living and then promises to help her family, and flies back to Dubai and sells her possessions to fly back to Dhaka to help her family, and then has spent the next 20 years of her life giving up everything to rescue children that are born into child slave labor. When they're 12 years old and have their first menstrual cycle, they're married to 30-year-old men, and some of them die in childbirth because their bodies can't cope with it because they're 12 years old when they get pregnant. She built a school to teach children English so that she could then bring them to Dubai and get them scholarships here. There isn't, apart from Hanabadi, which is a similar journey in Nepal, which the television show tells, there isn't enough people out there that think like that spend their life in service to others in that way. And so Maria had such a profound impact on me. And then what happens is then you then start seeing kindness. I suppose if it's like you see a red car and I say, look for a red car, all of a sudden you see the red car.
Yeah.
I think that it was just like, wow, that kindness, and it really impacted me. And then I saw other people in different ways being kind. And so, and again, when you see the children and you get to meet the children. So the first person that was really kind was the first person I met. So there's three, Maria is 3 people. So I'll tell you each one of them.
Was Maria first?
Maria was the first person.
So before you tell me the others, can you do me a favor? Could you tell me who Spencer was when he met Maria and he received this story? Just so we understand what your starting point was.
Financially secure, self-centered, focused on his own things in life.
Okay. And you met Maria how?
I joined something called the Social Capital Club, which was a group of people that got together on a Saturday, when Saturday used to be our Sunday, at the Capital Club to work on Goal 8 for the UN Sustainability Goals. And I met a guy called Raza Jaffa, and I started to become part of this community. And every Saturday I went there and was part of this community. And it was very nice. And Maria did a talk. And she did a talk and she brought these girls with her. And that was the first time I was exposed to her. Then I got to know Maria. And then eventually Maria said, you can meet some of the children. And I met some of the children. And when I met those children that day in the Mall of the Emirates, within 4 hours of that moment starting, these children became really important to me. And then I started to talk about, then I put out on Instagram, this glorious story. I put out a message on Instagram. Can somebody help? I need somebody to help. I've got 12 children with me. And this guy called Lo, I responded. And he turned up. He said, "Where are you?" And I hardly knew him. And he turned up at the Mall of the Emirates. He dropped everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. He dropped everything. And then he met the girls and me. We went to the fun fair. And then we went to Carrefour, the hypermarket. And he, I said to Maria, "What do the girls need?" She said, "They need everything." I'm like, "What does that mean?" She's like, "They haven't got anything, but it's the clothes they're wearing is all they've got." And I sat there with them and I was like, okay. Loa and I spend the next couple of hours just watching their magical, mystical expressions as they were looking at, I don't know, hair clips. And I was like, "Girls, get yourself some trainers." And they're like, "What do you mean get?" I mean, you know this story, I've told it. "Get myself some trainers." And they're like, "To keep?" And I'm like, "Yes, of course, to keep." And they're like, "Each?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And get some flip-flops and get some pajamas and get some underwear and get yourself a hairbrush. Have you got toothbrushes? No, we haven't got toothbrushes. We'll get a toothbrush. Feminine hygiene products. I mean, they're small, they're 7 or 8 years old, some of them at times, some of them 12, 13. And we just filled these 4 shopping trolleys up in Carrefour. And I went to pay for everything. And as I went to pay for everything, Lo, I said, please give me the privilege of doing this. And he was a young guy that was arguably probably at a beach club or somewhere, enjoying his Saturday afternoon, with his mates. And he just, 30 minutes he was there. And that was just like, whoa. And Loai is a guy that owns a company called Provident Real Estate and massively impacted me. And it was just like, I need to be more like this. And then there were 2 other episodes. Another episode where the other person in the room, Kerry, that's now producing the show, her husband, did something equally as kind, and it just blew me away. Just blew me away. And then I met Leo Logathitis, who had his TV show called The Kindness Diaries, and he's on my show, and I'm like, he believed that people were kind, and it was almost like I connected with him. It was this deep connection around kindness. And he just believed that people were kind, and if you give them a chance to be kind, they will be kind. And at the end of the show, I said to him, I said, "I'm jealous." He's like, "Why are you jealous?" I said, "'Cause you got a TV show and I don't." And he just looked back at me and he's like, "Why haven't you?" And he called me out. And I'm going to blow my nose, otherwise. True. And then he did. And then Leon said, "Would you like a TV show?" I said, "I'd love a TV show." He said, "Is anyone helping you?" I said, No one's helping me. I wouldn't even know where to start. He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you an hour of my time every weekend for the next 6 weeks. If you can make the hairs on my arm stand up, I will help you make a television show." And that's what he did. The first week, we had just sat for an hour. He was in LA, I was here, and we sat, and it was late at night for me and in the morning for him, and we just brainstormed. And then the second week again, and then the third week Sophia joined, and then the fourth week Steve joined, and the fifth week Dre joined, and all these people, producers and directors and DOPs, all came on this screen with me, and it's like, we're going to do it. Okay, this is what we have to do. And it's like, whoa. And then we made this documentary, and Leon was really kind, and Sophia is really kind, and all of the people that worked on that making that documentary did it from a place of kindness. They charged me for their time, for the expenses. They didn't charge me what a full production would cost because they believed it was too important a story to tell, that it needed to be commercialized in that way. So they didn't want to, I'd have to pay for flights and hotels and all of that kind of stuff, but their hourly rates were down to the absolute minimums. Sophia worked for free. And we made this, and this goes back then to, we talk about kindness, let's talk about failure. And I have a TV documentary that I made that the world hasn't seen. I could put it on YouTube tonight and the world could see it, but I've, over the years, not had enough advice, enough knowledge of what to do to sell it. And there were promises made some time ago about things that would happen, and all of these promises from various people never seem to mount to anything. And I don't want to make any money out of it. I would love for that show to be on a channel where everybody can go and see it easily and enjoy it, and whether that was a Netflix or Amazon, whatever that may be. I want people to know about Lena and Hannah and Maria, because they are just incredible human beings, and I feel inspired when I'm around them. And the kindness was really something that kind of hit a real chord with me at a time in my life which was probably a bit bleak and a bit dark, and I'd probably been reminded enough but never been exposed to it enough, and maybe there had been kindness around me but I hadn't seen it because I wasn't tuned into finding it. Yeah.
If you could say anything to Maria for shining a light bright enough to make you see that kindness and all the things that happen downstream from it, what would you say to her in a forever context? Like I said, this is a show that's naturally going to outlast you. So if you could say something on the record that encapsulates all the impact she's had on your journey, what would you say to her?
It would probably be something along the lines of, thank you for showing me what unconditional love is. Probably. Because there's never been a person in my life I've ever seen that has unconditional love for children like that. And we even had it this week. She will move heaven and earth. So I would say to Maria, thank you. And thank you for showing me unconditional love and teaching me kindness. Yeah.
How do you plan to pass it on and to scale it up? Like what within your wide talent base, what would you like to see as your contribution to her?
The kids. The kids need a future and they need to be happy, and they have every right to be happy. And it doesn't mean big houses and stuff. It means being happy. And the kids, they all deserve the right to something which we all take for granted. And they deserve the right to get an education. And they deserve the right to have a future that they can build for themselves. When you're conditioned, as the girls in the village in Nepal, to become prostitutes at the age of 8 years old, or the children in the slums in Dhaka to get married when they're 12 years old, and you're conditioned and you know no different, that is not a way to live. And so these children need to be given a future. I mean, they're kids, and they know no different. But when you see them different, like we have Chadney at the moment, one of the older girls who's in university in the UK on a scholarship, that girl is gonna do remarkable work in the world because she is deeply grateful that she's been given the chance to get an education, and she wants to go back and tackle the problems in her home country with the skills and the education she's got. And that's just this is a girl from the slums of Dakar that's in a top university in the UK studying biomedical science. A pretty difficult thing to study. and just filled with joy.
The lesson is to be more appreciative, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow, man. If what I'm feeling today, having talked to you, is what you felt hundreds of times, then I can only imagine what kind of character it's helped you build and what that character is going to be able to do in the future. So thank you so much, Spencer, man. Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable and giving people a slice of what this impact feels like. Based on what I've learned about the podcast and you and the impacts it's made, the only thing that feels unresolved here is the definition of success, because I wouldn't want you to be on a lonely island of the only person that feels like it's not enough of a success. And so my question is, do you think it's time for you to redefine what success is?
I suppose when you think about what the word success means, we're unfortunately in a city, in a country where success is measured very often by all of the material blessings, I guess, that people get, whether that be the cars, the watches, the houses, the private jets, and yada, yada, yada. You know, the conversations at dinner tables about how much money people have made, rather than the impact that they've had. And that's why when people talk to me about who the most successful person you know is, I say Maria is the most successful person I know. And they go, well, how? How many children have you rescued from the sons of Bangladesh? None. Okay, so what did you do? Oh, you sold a few houses. Oh, you built a company. Oh, you had an IPO. Oh, you bought Bitcoin at $300. Is that really success? Well, you made more money than somebody else. That's not how I see it. I think that when I look at what success really is, it's that impact that you've had to make the world a better place by doing something. You take the guy that invented the internet. What was his name? Chris Berners,
yeah,
whatever his name was. He never made any money out of it. He never made any money out of the internet, but he created it, and it led for this world to open up that didn't exist before.
Who would you rather be then, him or Bezos?
Would I rather be him or Bezos? For one reason, I'd rather be Bezos, and that one reason is the same thing that I'm noticing his ex-wife is doing, taking half of her divorce settlement and giving it to charity, and like investing it wisely and supporting people that need that money most. I don't believe we all need millions and millions. Money doesn't change you after a while once you have enough. So I don't think success should be measured in money. Success should be, and it starts in the home. How good, kind, and attentive a father you are, or a mother you are. That's the beginnings of success. The impact you have in your local community, your church, or wherever that may be, for the better. And I don't mean Billy Graham kind of impact. I mean that impact you have, and then you look at the people that go and do a sponsored walk or a sponsored run or a sponsored cycle ride across, a county, a country, whatever it is, to raise money for cancer. Wow. Those people that took the time to do that, okay, to fight for something that was over and above or outside of anything that they needed for themselves. If you give your life up to make the life for others better, you are immensely successful. And how could it be defined in any other way other than that? You be the best version of the person that you can be, and you lead with kindness, and you focus heavily on trying to make the world a better place, like really make the world a better place in whichever way you can do it, then I think that's success.
Your podcast has made the listeners better. It's made the city of Dubai better, and it's clearly made you better. So maybe it's about time to say that this podcast is a success.
Yeah.
And congratulations on making this podcast a success. Congratulations on all the pivots. And congratulations in advance for the amazing things you're going to do heading into episodes 500, 600, 700, and so on. Well done, Spencer. Very proud of you, mate.
Cheers, man.
Wonderful
It's been
episode.
so nice sitting here talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Raj.
I'm
I
so glad we
appreciate
got
it.
to share with people.